The message came from the stars, like a wave of fear washing over every planet in the known galaxy. Emperor Varath of the Kelani Empire needed help. His beloved companion was dying, and he was asking no, begging for someone to save her. This was strange news. Emperor Varath never begged. He commanded. He conquered. He ruled 17 star systems with an iron fist, and his name made even the bravest warriors tremble. The Kelani were the most powerful species in the galaxy. Their ships could destroy entire planets. Their soldiers feared nothing. Their technology was so advanced that other species could barely understand it. But now, the great emperor was helpless. The creature that lay dying on his flagship was called a Miri. She was small, about the size of an earth cat, with soft fur that normally glowed with colors like a rainbow. Her name was Sola, and she had been the emperor's only companion for over 200 years. The Kelani lived for thousands of years, and in all that time, Varath had never let anyone close to him. Only Sola, only this small, gentle creature who purred when she was happy and whose eyes held more wisdom than most beings in the universe. 3 days ago, an assassin had tried to kill the emperor. The assassin failed, but his poisoned blade found a different target. Sola had jumped in front of her master, taking the wound meant for him. Now she lay on a medical bed, her beautiful fur turning gray, her breathing shallow and weak. The emperor had called for the best doctors in the galaxy. The Thelian Medical Guild was known throughout the stars for their healing abilities. They could cure diseases that killed millions. They could rebuild broken bodies. They could do things that seemed like magic to lesser species. But when the Thelians arrived and saw Sola, they shook their heads. "The poison has spread too far," their lead healer said. "It has reached her neural pathways. Her empathic centers are failing. We cannot save her, Emperor. We are sorry." Varath's 4 eyes narrowed. Cannot or will not. The Thelians looked at each other nervously. The truth was simpler and more shameful. They were afraid. If they tried and failed, the Emperor might destroy them in his grief and rage. It was better to say the task was impossible than to risk his anger. "Cannot, great Emperor," they lied. "We truly cannot." After the Thelians left, Varath called the Vexari. They were masters of bioengineering, able to change and improve living things at the deepest level. Surely they could help. But the Vexari also refused. "The Miri's biology is too strange," they claimed. "Our methods are not suitable for empathic creatures. We might make things worse." Then came the Orium Collective, beings who had replaced their organic bodies with machines long ago. They were the masters of medical technology. Their answer was the same. "Our synthetic medicine cannot work with organic empathic bonds." "We are sorry." One by one, every advanced species in the galaxy found an excuse. The Pelori said their healing songs only worked on their own kind. The Drath claimed their medicine required ingredients that would poison a Miri. The Yenari simply did not respond to the message at all. No one would help. The most powerful being in the galaxy stood alone, watching his only friend slowly die. Far away, on a small space station orbiting Earth, a young woman named Yuna watched the news on a flickering screen. She sat in a tiny clinic that smelled like antiseptic and animal fur. Around her were cages holding creatures from a dozen different worlds, a 3-eyed lizard from Vex Prime, a furry blob from the Orium Moons, a bird with crystalline feathers from somewhere she could not pronounce. Yuna was a veterinarian. She was not famous. She was not rich. She had graduated from veterinary school 5 years ago and had decided to specialize in alien animals because she found them fascinating. Her clinic was small and often struggled to pay its bills. Most of her patients belonged to traders and travelers who could not afford the expensive medical centers on the main stations. But Yuna was good at her job. Very good. She had a gift for understanding animals, for knowing what they needed, even when they could not tell her. She had saved creatures that other doctors had given up on, simply by paying attention and caring enough to try different approaches. Her colleague Do-Wan walked into the room and saw her staring at the screen. He was older than her, with tired eyes and steady hands. He had been a veterinarian for 20 years and had seen many things. "You have that look on your face," he said. "What look?" "The look that means you are about to do something foolish." Yuna pointed at the screen, where the image of Soa was being broadcast across the galaxy. The mirror looked so small, so fragile. "Look at her. She is dying, and no one will help." Do-Wan sat down heavily in a chair. "No one will help because helping means dealing with Emperor Vareth. Do you know what he did to the last species that displeased him? He burned their home world, turned it to glass. No one survived. He did that because they attacked his people," Yuna said quietly. "He did that because he is a monster. And monsters do monstrous things when they are hurt and angry." Do-Wan looked at her seriously. "Yuna, I know what you are thinking. Do not do it. Someone should help that creature. Someone with a death wish, maybe." Yuna stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the stars stretching into infinity. Somewhere out there, a small animal was suffering. Somewhere out there, an emperor was watching his friend die. She did not care about galactic politics or ancient wars. She only saw a patient who needed help. "I have treated hundreds of species," she said softly. "I have healed animals that other doctors said were hopeless. Maybe I can help." "You are human," Do-Wan said. "We have only been in space for 100 years. The other species think we are primitive. Children playing among the stars. Why would the Emperor even listen to you? Because no one else is willing to try." Yuna turned back to face her friend. Her eyes were calm and determined. She had made her decision. "I'm going to send a message to the Kalani flagship," she said. "I am going to offer my help." Do-Wan stared at her for a long moment. Then he sighed and shook his head. "You are either the bravest person I have ever met," he said, "or the most foolish." Yuna smiled slightly. "Maybe both." She walked to her computer and began to type. Her message was simple and honest. She was a veterinarian from Earth. She had experience treating many species. She did not know if she could help, but she was willing to try. She pressed send and watched the message disappear into the vast darkness of space. Somewhere across the galaxy, on a ship the size of a small moon, Emperor Vareth received her message. He read it once, then again. A human. A simple animal doctor from a primitive world. It was absurd. It was laughable. Faviz. But it was also the only offer of help he had received. He typed his response with hands that had crushed empires. "Come." The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. A human had volunteered to treat the Emperor's Miri. A human. From Earth. The primitive species that had only discovered space travel a century ago. The species that still fought wars among themselves. The species that most advanced civilizations consider barely more than clever animals. On the Great Council stations, alien diplomats laughed at the absurdity. In the medical academies of Thel, healers shook their heads at human arrogance. On trading ships and military vessels, soldiers and merchants made jokes about the foolish Earthwoman who had just signed her own death sentence. "She will fail," they said. "And when she fails, the Emperor will destroy her. Maybe he will destroy her entire planet. That is what happens when you disappoint Vareth." But Yuna did not hear these words. She was too busy packing her medical bag. The bag was old and worn, made of brown leather that had belonged to her grandmother. Inside, she placed everything she thought she might need. Basic surgical tools, medicines for pain and infection, bandages and antiseptic, a small device that could scan living things and show her what was happening inside their bodies. None of it was advanced by galactic standards. None of it would impress the Kalani, but these tools had saved lives before. They would have to be enough. A young woman appeared at the door of the clinic. Her name was Ji Woo, and she was Yuna's veterinary technician. She was 23 years old, with short black hair and quick, clever hands. She had worked with Yuna for 2 years and had learned more in that time than most people learned in a decade. "I heard what you did," Ji Woo said. "I heard you sent a message to the Emperor. News travels fast. Is it true? Are you really going?" Yuna nodded without looking up from her packing. Ji Woo was quiet for a moment. Then she walked into the room and grabbed another bag from the shelf. "What are you doing?" Yuna asked. "Packing. I am coming with you." "Ji Woo, this is dangerous." "You do not have to." "I know I do not have to." Ji Woo started filling the bag with supplies. "But you are going to need help. You cannot do surgery alone. You need someone to hand you instruments, monitor vital signs, keep the patient calm." She looked at Yuna with fierce determination. "You taught me everything I know. Did you think I would let you face this alone?" Yuna felt something warm spread through her chest. She had always worked alone before Ji Woo came along. She had forgotten what it felt like to have someone stand beside her. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Thank me after we survive." The journey to the Kelani flagship took 3 days. Yuna and Ji Woo traveled on a small transport ship provided by the Emperor's people. The ship was cold and gray, built for function rather than comfort. The Kelani crew ignored them completely, looking at them like they were insects that had somehow crawled aboard. During the journey, Yuna studied everything she could find about Miri. The information was limited. They were rare creatures, found only on a single moon in a distant system. They were empathic, which meant they could feel the emotions of those around them. They bonded with one person for life and could live for hundreds of years. Their biology was strange and not well understood by galactic science. "The problem is their empathic ability," Yuna said to Ji Woo as they reviewed the data together. "It is connected to their immune system. When they are stressed or afraid, their bodies stop fighting disease. When they feel safe and loved, they heal faster. So the key is not just medicine," Ji Woo said slowly. "The key is making her feel safe." "Exactly. But she has been poked and prodded by strange aliens for days. She must be terrified." When they finally arrived at the flagship, Yuna understood why the Kalani were feared. The ship was enormous, bigger than any space station Yuna had ever seen. Its surface was covered with weapons that could level cities. Its dark metal hull absorbed light like a black hole. Just looking at it made her feel small and afraid. They were escorted through endless corridors by guards who stood 3 meters tall. The Kelani were massive beings with thick gray skin and 4 eyes that glowed faintly orange. They did not speak to the humans. They barely seemed to acknowledge their existence. Finally, they reached a large chamber that had been converted into a medical room. And there, lying on a bed of soft fabric, was Sola. Yuna's heart broke at the sight. The Miri was so small, barely larger than a house cat. Her fur, which should have been bright and colorful, had faded to a dull gray. Her eyes were closed, and her breathing was shallow and uneven. A wound on her chest oozed dark fluid, and even from across the room, Yuna could see the infection spreading beneath her skin. Standing beside the bed was the Emperor himself. Varath was the largest Kelani Yuna had ever seen. His body was covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed with precious metals and strange gems. His 4 eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her knees weak. He radiated power and danger like a sun radiates heat. "You are the human," he said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "Yes, Yuna was surprised that her voice did not shake. I am Yuna. This is my assistant Jiwoo. The others said it was hopeless. The Emperor gestured toward Sola. They said the infection has reached her neural pathways. They said she will die in agony within days. Yuna walked slowly toward the bed. She could feel the Emperor's eyes on her, watching her every movement. She knew that if she said the wrong thing, if she made him angry, he could kill her with a single blow. But she did not think about that. She only looked at Sola gently, carefully. She placed her hand on the Mary's head. The fur was cold and lifeless beneath her fingers. Sola's eyes opened slightly, and Yuna saw something there: fear, pain, exhaustion. Hello, little one, Yuna whispered. I know you are scared. I know you hurt. But I am here to help you. Sola made a small, weak sound. It might have been a cry of pain. It might have been a question. Yuna looked up at the Emperor. He was watching her with those 4 burning eyes, and she saw something she did not expect. Behind the power, behind the anger, there was fear. The fear of someone watching their loved one die. I cannot promise I will succeed, Yuna said honestly. But I will not give up. I will do everything I can. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Then do it, human. Save her. Yuna turned back to Sola and took a deep breath. She did not know if she could succeed. She did not know if her simple tools and basic knowledge would be enough. But she knew one thing for certain. She was going to try. Jiwoo, she said quietly. Let us begin. The first thing Yuna did was ask everyone to leave. The Kelani guards looked at her like she had gone mad. The Emperor's eyes narrowed with suspicion. No one gave orders on his ship. No one told his soldiers what to do. Please, Yuna said calmly. She can feel your emotions. All of you are afraid and tense. It is making her worse. The Emperor studied her for a long moment. Then he raised one massive hand and gestured. The guards left the room without a word. I will stay, Varith said. It was not a request. Yuna nodded. She had expected that. Then I need you to do something difficult. I need you to be calm. Not just on the outside. On the inside too. She can feel what you feel. If you are afraid, she is afraid. I am the Emperor of the Kelani. I do not feel fear. Yuna looked at him with gentle eyes. Everyone feels fear when someone they love is dying. There is no shame in it. Something flickered in those 4 orange eyes. The Emperor did not respond, but he moved to a corner of the room and sat down heavily on the floor. He closed his eyes and began to breathe slowly and deeply. Yuna turned to Jiwoo. Help me set up. We need soft lighting. And find me something that makes gentle sounds. Music, if you can. While Jiwoo worked, Yuna examined Sola more closely. She used her scanner to look inside the Mary's small body. What she saw confirmed her fears. The infection was bad, spreading through the blood like poison ink in water. The previous doctors had tried to fight it with powerful antibiotics, but the medicine had been too strong. It had damaged Sola's delicate organs almost as much as the infection itself. They were using warship cannons to kill a fly, Yuna murmured to herself. The Kelani approach to medicine was the same as their approach to everything else. Overwhelming force. Crush the enemy with superior power. But Sola was not a battlefield. She was a small, frightened creature who needed gentleness, not violence. Jiwoo returned with a small device. I found music files in the ship's database. They have recordings from many worlds. Find something soft. Something calm. After some searching, Jiwoo played a recording of ocean waves from a water world called Pellar. The sound filled the room gentle, rhythmic, peaceful. Yuna saw Sola's ears twitch slightly at the sound. Good, Yuna said. Dim the lights more. and bring me warm water and clean cloth. They worked through the first hour cleaning the wound. Yuna moved slowly and carefully, removing dead tissue millimeter by millimeter. Every time Sola flinched, she stopped and spoke softly to her. Every time the Miri's breathing became too fast, she paused and waited for it to calm. The other doctors tried to do this in an hour, Jiwoo observed. They were rushing. They were scared of failing. Fear makes people rush. Yuna gently wiped the wound with antiseptic. We have time. We will take as much time as she needs. By the third hour, the wound was clean. But the infection was still inside, still spreading. Yuna looked at her medicine bag and made a decision. I am not going to use strong antibiotics, she said. Our body is too weak. Instead, we will use small doses of mild medicine combined with immune boosters. We will help her body fight the infection itself. That will take much longer, Jiwoo said. Yes, but it will work with her body instead of against it. The Emperor spoke from his corner. His eyes were still closed, but he was listening. The Thelians said her immune system was failing. They said it could not fight anymore. Her immune system failed because she was terrified and in pain, Yuna explained. When Miri are scared, their bodies shut down. They stop fighting. But if we can make her feel safe, her body will start working again. How do you make a dying creature feel safe? Yuna looked at Sola's small, still form. The same way you make any creature feel safe. You stay with them. You speak to them. You touch them gently. You let them know they are not alone. She settled beside the bed and began to talk to Sola. She talked about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests. She talked about her grandmother, who had taught her to love animals. She talked about the first creature she had ever saved, a small bird with a broken wing. Her voice was soft and steady, like the ocean waves still playing in the background. By the 6th hour, something changed. Sola's breathing became a little deeper, a little more regular. The Miri was responding to the sound of Yuna's voice, even if she could not understand the words. Jiwoo prepared the first dose of medicine, a tiny amount, barely enough to notice. Yuna injected it with a needle so thin it was almost invisible. Sola did not even flinch. Her stress levels are dropping, Jiwoo reported, watching the scanner. Her heart rate is slowing down. Keep watching. Let me know if anything changes. Hour after hour passed. Yuna did not sleep. She did not eat. She stayed beside Sola, talking, stroking her fur, monitoring every small change in her condition. When the Miri whimpered in her sleep, Yuna hummed an old lullaby from Earth. When Sola shivered from fever, Yuna wrapped her in warm blankets. At hour 12, something wonderful happened. A small patch of color appeared on Sola's fur. Just a tiny spot near her ear, faintly glowing with a soft blue light. But it was there. Life was returning. Look, Jiwoo whispered, her eyes wide. It is working. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes, but she blinked them away. They were not finished yet. Not even close. The Emperor opened his eyes and saw the spot of color. For the first time, his massive body seemed to relax slightly. You are doing something the others could not. I am not doing anything special, Yuna said. I am just treating her like a living thing instead of a problem to solve. They continued through the night. More medicine, given in small, gentle doses. More talking, more soft touches, more patience. The infection began to retreat, pushed back by Sola's awakening immune system. More patches of color appeared on her fur blue, green, soft gold. At hour 16, Sola opened her eyes fully for the first time. She looked up at Yuna with large, luminous eyes and made a sound. Not a whimper of pain this time. A purr. Soft and weak but unmistakable. She was purring. Jiwoo laughed with relief. Even the Emperor rose to his feet, staring at his companion with something like wonder on his ancient face. "She is fighting," Yuna said, her voice thick with emotion. "She wants to live. Her body is fighting now. 2 more hours of careful work." Yuna cleaned the wound one final time and wrapped it in healing bandages. She gave solar fluids to help her weakened body recover. She made sure the Miri was comfortable, surrounded by warmth and softness. Finally, at hour 18, Yuna sat back and let out a long breath. "The infection is contained," she said. "She will need weeks to fully recover. But she is going to live." The Emperor stood motionless, staring at the small creature on the bed. Sola's fur was still mostly gray, but patches of color were spreading across her body like sunrise spreading across a dark sky. She was sleeping peacefully now, her small chest rising and falling with steady breaths. "You did it," Vareth said quietly. "You saved her." Yuna shook her head. "She saved herself. I just gave her reason to try." Morning came to the flagship, though in space there was no real morning. The lights in the medical room slowly brightened to match the rhythm of a day, and Sola opened her eyes. The Miri looked around the room with clear, bright eyes. Her fur had regained much of its color during the night. Blues and greens and golds shimmered across her small body like light dancing on water. She was still weak, still recovering, but the shadow of death had left her face. Yuna had not slept. She sat beside the bed, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but her heart light with relief. When Sola saw her, the Miri made a soft chirping sound and lifted one small paw toward her. "Good morning, little one," Yuna said gently. "How do you feel?" Sola could not answer with words, but her response was clear enough. She pressed her head against Yuna's hand and purred. It was a stronger purr than before, full of warmth and gratitude. Jiwoo was asleep in a corner of the room, curled up on a pile of blankets she had found somewhere. She had worked just as hard as Yuna through the long night, and her body had finally demanded rest. Yuna did not wake her. She deserved the sleep. The Emperor had not left the room either. He stood by the window, staring out at the stars. He had been silent for hours, watching, waiting. Now he turned and walked slowly toward the bed. Sola saw him coming and made an excited sound. She tried to stand, to go to him, but her legs were too weak. She fell back onto the soft fabric of the bed with a frustrated cry. "Do not push yourself," Yuna said. "You need more time to heal." But the Emperor was already there. He knelt beside the bed, bringing his massive form down to Sola's level. His huge hand, capable of crushing stone, reached out and gently stroked the Miri's head. "My little one," he said, his rough voice softer than Yuna had ever heard it. "You came back to me." Sola purred louder and pressed her whole body against his hand. Colors rippled through her fur, bright pinks and warm oranges, the colors of joy and love. For a long moment, there was no Emperor and no dying creature. There was only a being reunited with the one he loved most in the universe. Yuna felt like she was intruding on something private. She started to stand, to give them space, but the Emperor spoke without looking at her. "Stay." It was not a command this time. It was a request. Yuna settled back down and waited. After several minutes, Emperor Vara stood and turned to face her. His 4 eyes studied her with an expression she could not read. He was silent for so long that Yuna began to feel nervous. Had she done something wrong? Had she offended him somehow? Then the Emperor did something that made no sense. Something that went against everything the galaxy knew about the Kelani and their proud ruler. He knelt before her, the most powerful being in 17 star systems. The conqueror of worlds, the destroyer of armies. He knelt before a young veterinarian from Earth. "What are you doing?" Yuna asked, shocked. "I am honoring you," Vareth said simply. "You succeeded where the greatest minds in the galaxy failed. You saved the life that matters most to me." How did you do it? Yuna shook her head slowly. I did not do anything special. I treated her like I would any scared, hurt animal. With patience. With kindness. The others were so afraid of failing that they forgot she was a living thing that needed comfort, not just medicine. They saw a problem to be solved. You saw a creature to be loved. I suppose so. Yes. The Emperor rose to his feet. He was quiet for another moment, thinking. Then he spoke again. I have ruled for 300 years. I have seen wonders and horrors beyond counting. I have watched species rise and fall. I have made decisions that shaped the fate of billions. He paused. But I have never seen what I saw last night. What do you mean? You did not heal her body first. You healed her spirit. And her body followed. He looked at Sola, who was watching them both with bright, curious eyes. The Thelians would have used powerful drugs. The Vexery would have rebuilt her organs. The Orium would have replaced her blood with machines. All of them would have fought the sickness with force and technology. That is not always the best way. No, it is not. The Emperor turned back to Yuna. You showed me something I had forgotten. Something my people forgot long ago in our rush to become powerful. Medicine is not just science. It is compassion. It is connection. It is the simple act of caring enough to sit with someone through their darkest night. Yuna did not know what to say. She had never expected words like this from the most feared being in the galaxy. A sound came from the corner of the room. Jiwoo was waking up, stretching her tired muscles and rubbing her eyes. When she saw the Emperor standing so close to Yuna, she scrambled to her feet in alarm. It is all right, Yuna said quickly. Everything is all right. Jiwoo looked at Sola and gasped. The Miri was sitting up now, still weak but clearly recovering. Her fur glowed with beautiful colors, and she was grooming herself with small, careful movements. She is amazing, Jiwoo Sola chirped at her. As if accepting the compliment, the Emperor moved toward the door, then stopped. He looked back at the two humans with something new in his eyes. Respect, gratitude, perhaps even wonder. The galaxy calls your species primitive, he said. They say you are young, weak, unremarkable. They say you have nothing to offer the advanced civilizations of the stars. He paused. They are wrong. With that, he left the room. His heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor until they faded into silence. Yuna and Jiwoo looked at each other. Neither of them quite believed what had just happened. Did the Emperor of the Kalani just kneel before you? Jiwoo asked slowly. I think he did. And did he just say that humans are not primitive? I think he did that too. They stood in stunned silence for a moment. Then Sola made an impatient sound and pawed at Yuna's leg. She wanted attention. She wanted to be held. Yuna laughed and carefully picked up the small creature, cradling her against her chest. Sola purred contentedly and closed her eyes. You know, Jiwoo said, I think we just changed history. We just saved one small animal, Yuna replied softly, stroking Sola's glowing fur. That is all I ever wanted to do. But somewhere in her heart she knew Jiwoo was right. Something had shifted. Something important. The way the Emperor had looked at them, the words he had spoken, none of it would stay secret for long. The galaxy would hear about what happened here, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. News traveled fast across the stars, but this news traveled faster than anything before. Within hours of Sola's recovery, every corner of the galaxy knew what had happened. A human, a simple veterinarian from Earth, had saved the Emperor's beloved companion when every advanced species had refused to even try. The story spread through trading stations and military outposts, through academic centers and political councils. It was discussed in the grand halls of the Thelian Medical Academy, where healers who had refused to help now hung their heads in shame. It was whispered in the laboratories of the Vexery, where scientists who had claimed the task was impossible now wondered how they had been so blind. And it was celebrated on Earth, where humans who had spent a century being treated as lesser beings finally had a reason to stand tall. But for Yuna and Jiwoo, the days after Sola's recovery were strange and overwhelming. They stayed on the Kelani flagship while Sola continued to heal, and every day brought new surprises. The Kelani crew, who had ignored them before, now treated them with respect. Soldiers who had looked at them like insects now bowed their heads as they passed. Officers brought them food and gifts, trying to show their gratitude in awkward, unfamiliar ways. "This is strange," Jiwoo said one evening as they sat in the room that had been given to them. It was a beautiful room, with soft beds and windows that looked out at the stars. Far nicer than anything they had known on the small space station orbiting Earth. "Very strange," Yuna agreed. "I am just a veterinary technician. I am not supposed to be treated like this. You helped save the Emperor's companion. To them, that makes you important." Jiwoo shook her head in disbelief. "My mother is not going to believe any of this." On the seventh day, Emperor Vorath summoned them to his throne room. It was a vast chamber of black stone and golden light, filled with advisors and officers and diplomats from a dozen different worlds. At the far end, on a throne carved from a single massive crystal, sat the Emperor himself. And on his lap, purring contentedly, was Sola. The Miri's fur glowed with brilliant colors, deep blues, vibrant greens, shimmering golds. She looked healthy and happy, nothing like the dying creature they had found just a week ago. When she saw Yuna and Jiwoo approaching, she chirped with excitement and jumped down from the throne. "Sola, wait," Vorath began, but the Miri was already running toward Yuna on her small legs. Yuna knelt and caught her, laughing as Sola pressed against her and purred so loudly that the whole room could hear. "I missed you too," Yuna said softly. The Emperor rose from his throne and walked toward them. The crowd parted before him like water before a ship. When he reached Yuna, he stopped and addressed not just her, but everyone in the room. "Let it be known across all my territories and beyond," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The human species is under the protection of the Kelani Empire. They are not our subjects. They are our allies, our equals. Any who threaten them will answer to me personally." A wave of shock went through the crowd. The Kelani had never declared any species their equal. They had conquered worlds, enslaved civilizations, destroyed those who opposed them. But allies? Equals? It was unheard of. One of the diplomats, a Thelian with silver skin, stepped forward nervously. "Great Emperor, the humans are. They are young. They have only been in space for 100 years, Vorath interrupted. "And in that time, they have shown more wisdom than species who have traveled the stars for millennia." He looked at Yuna. "She succeeded where all of you failed. Not because she had better technology, not because she had more knowledge, but because she had something you have forgotten how to use." "What is that, Great Emperor?" "Compassion." The word hung in the air like a judgment. Yuna returned to Earth 3 weeks later. She came home not as a simple veterinarian, but as a hero. There were celebrations and speeches, medals, and honors. Important people wanted to meet her. News channels wanted to interview her. Everyone wanted to know about the human who had changed the galaxy. But Yuna did not care about any of that. She cared about the new clinic that the Kelani Empire helped her build. It was 10 times larger than her old one, equipped with the best technology from a dozen different worlds. But it kept the same spirit as the small station where she had started, a place where any creature, from any planet, could come and find help. Jiwoo stayed with her, of course. They were partners now, and the young technician had learned things during their adventure that no school could teach. Together, they began training new veterinarians, young people from Earth who wanted to follow their example. Medicine is not just science, Una told her students on their first day. It is not just about drugs and surgery and machines. It is about connection. It is about caring. When you treat a patient, you must see them not as a problem to be solved, but as a living thing that is scared and in pain and needs your help. Some of the students nodded. Others looked confused. They would learn. In the months and years that followed, something changed in the galaxy. It happened slowly, like the turning of a great wheel. Other species began to study human medicine, human psychology, human culture. They had always dismissed humanity as primitive, but now they wondered if they had missed something important. The Thelians invited human doctors to their academies. The Vexeri asked human artists to help design their new bioforms. The Orium Collective, who had replaced their emotions with logic long ago, began to study human music and poetry, trying to understand what they had lost. And on the Kelani flagship, Emperor Varath sat with Sola on his lap and thought about the future. He had lived for thousands of years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had believed that power came from strength, from technology, from the ability to destroy your enemies. But a young woman from a small planet had shown him something different. She had shown him that the greatest power was not the ability to take life, but the willingness to save it. Not the strength to conquer, but the courage to care. He looked down at Sola, who was purring happily, her colors shifting like a rainbow. She was old for a Miri, but healthy and strong. She might live for another century, and every day of that century, she would remind him of the lesson he had learned. Kindness was not weakness. Compassion was not foolishness. And sometimes, the smallest actions could change the universe. Far away, on Earth, Una finished her last surgery of the day, a small bird-like creature from a distant world who had broken its wing. She bandaged the wing carefully and placed the creature in a warm cage to rest. "You will be flying again soon," she promised it. The creature chirped softly, as if it understood. Una smiled and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, countless creatures needed help. Countless lives waited to be saved. She could not help them all, but she could try. And that, she had learned, was what being human was all about. Not being the strongest. Not being the smartest. Not having the best technology or the biggest ships or the most powerful weapons. Just being brave enough to try. Kind enough to care. And stubborn enough to never, ever give up. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. And the galaxy, slowly, was beginning to understand.